She hasn't aged since the 1936 County Fair.
The last photograph taken at the 1936 County Fair wasn't supposed to be unusual. Until someone noticed, she never appeared in another one again. But she never changed either.
Welcome to Sleepy Echoes Unwind, where the night remembers old stories. Tonight, we journey into a place where shadows linger and forgotten whispers rise with the dark. Now, light your lanterns, slow your breathing, and let us drift together into the hush of the night. Some stories are just stories. Tall tales you tell on a porch during a humid summer evening to pass the time. Maybe put a little chill in the air when the heat won't break. They're colorful threads in the local tapestry, but you don't actually believe them. Not really. But other stories have teeth. They're less like threads and more like roots, sunk deep into the soil of a place, drawing up a darkness that stains everything it touches. The story of the girl at the Alachua County Fair is one of those. It's a story that bleeds from one generation to the next. A story that some people will tell you isn't a story at all. It begins, like so many strange tales do, under the string-light glow of a midway, with the scent of popcorn and damp earth in the air. It begins with a dance, and it ends, well, it never really ends. It just waits. It waits for the fair to come back to town. In 1936, right in the middle of the Great Depression, she danced at the Alachua County Fair like sin itself given form. She was a flicker of impossible color in a world of sepia and dust. And by the time the sun came up, casting its first weak rays over the trampled field, 3 men were dead. Not stabbed, not shot, just stopped. 80 years later, the fair returned after decades of silence. And so did she. I saw her. I saw her dance, unchanged, not a day older. And that's when my story, the one I can't stop telling, really began. Section 1. The Legend of 1936. The summer of 1936 was brutal. The air in Alachua County, Florida was thick enough to drink, a soupy mix of heat, humidity, and the drone of cicadas that felt like a constant, low-grade fever. For most people, life was a hard-scrabble affair, a daily grind against poverty and dust. The Great Depression had wrung the hope out of the land and the people with it. So when the county fair rolled into town, it was more than a distraction. It was a desperately needed gasp of air. It was a week of manufactured joy, a temporary world of colored lights and candied apples. The fairgrounds were a chaotic symphony. You had livestock barns with farmers showing off their prized pigs, quilting competitions where stern-faced women displayed their stitchery, and grandstand shows with traveling acrobats. The midway was the heart of it all, a gauntlet of ring-toss games, tilt-a-whirls that creaked ominously, and barkers promising sights that would astound and amaze. It was a place of cheap thrills and fleeting magic, a world away from the grim reality waiting just beyond the dusty perimeter. And into this world, she walked. No one saw her arrive. It was as if she simply appeared out of the humid twilight, a mirage in a scarlet dress that clung to her like a second skin. In an era of washed-out gingham and worn denim, she was a slash of vibrant, impossible color. Her hair was black as a raven's wing, her lips painted a defiant red, and her eyes held a challenge, a promise, and a terrifying depth that seemed to swallow the midway's flickering lights. She moved through the fair with an unnerving grace. The carnies, usually loud and leering, fell silent as she passed. She'd play the games, and she never lost. With a flick of her wrist, a wooden ring would land perfectly around a glass bottleneck. She'd offer a slow, knowing smile, decline the prize, and move on, her hips swaying to a rhythm only she could hear. The men watched her, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and raw hunger. They were farmers and laborers, men with calloused hands and hard lives. She was everything they weren't, effortless, beautiful, and utterly unobtainable. Or so they thought. The first was a young man named Samuel Blackwood, known for his cocky grin and for being able to outdrink any man in 3 counties. He saw her by the Ferris wheel and swaggered over, offering to win her a stuffed bear. She turned her head slowly, her dark eyes sizing him up. "I don't care for trinkets," she said, her voice a low purr. "But I do care for a dance." Later that night, in the makeshift dance pavilion, they danced. It was a waltz, but she moved with a sultry, hypnotic rhythm that felt older and more dangerous than any waltz. Samuel, usually clumsy, moved with a newfound grace, his eyes locked on hers. The fiddle music seemed to warp around them, growing faster, more frantic. The air grew thick. People watching later said that as they spun, their shadows seemed to twist and elongate, some looking almost like horns. Samuel stumbled, clutching his chest. His grin was gone, replaced by a mask of confusion and pain. He collapsed mid-waltz. His heart had simply given out. The music screeched to a halt. A woman screamed, but the girl in the red dress just stepped back, her expression unreadable, before melting into the crowd. The second was Elias Thorne, a wealthy landowner with a reputation for being as unyielding as the cypress trees on his property. He was a man who believed everything had a price. He found her by the river bordering the fairgrounds. "A tragedy, what happened to the Blackwood boy," he said smoothly. "Weak heart, they say." She didn't look at him. "The heat takes what it wants," she replied, skipping a stone across the dark water. "Everything has its price," Elias pressed, stepping closer. "Name yours. A dance? A lifetime of jewels? I am a man of means." This time, she turned. Her smile was sharp. "You think you can buy a dance with me, Mr. Thorne?" she asked, her voice laced with amusement and contempt. "Very well, but the price is steeper than you imagine. I want a promise, and it has to be made before a witness." A drunk, half asleep on a nearby bench, stirred. Elias gestured to the man. "Him? Fine. What's the promise?" "That you'll dance with me until dawn," she whispered, her eyes glittering, "and that you won't look away, not for a second." He agreed, of course. He thought it was a game. As they danced, Elias felt a chill seep into his bones. He tried to look away from her spellbinding gaze, but he couldn't. He felt his strength leaving him, his breath growing shallow. When his foreman found him hours later, Elias was slumped against the grandstand, his eyes wide open, staring at nothing. The doctor called it a stroke, but those who saw him dance knew better. The third was barely a man at all. Billy Ray Cobb, a quiet, gentle boy of 17 who worked at the feed store. He wasn't bold like Samuel, or rich like Elias. He was just smitten. He'd watched her all night, his heart aching. He saw what happened to the others, but in his youthful innocence, he believed his intentions were pure. He didn't want to conquer her, he just wanted to be near her. He found her at the edge of the fairgrounds as the first hint of gray lightened the sky. "Ma'am," he whispered, I just wanted to say you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." She turned, and for the first time her expression seemed to soften. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Pity? Regret? It was gone in an instant. "You have a good heart, Billy Ray," she said, and the fact she knew his name sent a shiver down his spine. "A pure heart is a rare thing." She reached out and touched his cheek. Her fingers were impossibly cold. "Go home," she whispered. "Forget you ever saw me." But he couldn't. He stood there, mesmerized, as she turned and walked away. When Billy Ray didn't show up to open the feed store at sunrise, his father went looking for him. They found him near a small footbridge. He'd apparently tripped and hit his head on the rocks in the shallow creek below. A tragic accident, the sheriff said. 3 men, dead by dawn. The town didn't call it a stroke or a heart attack or an accident. They called it a reckoning. They said the devil had come to the Alachua County Fair to collect his due, and he had sent his bride to do the bidding. The only proof she ever existed was 3 fresh graves and a legend that would fester for the next 80 years. Section 2. The Revival of 2016. 80 years is a long time. Long enough for stories to fade into myth. By 2016, the legend of the Devil's Bride was little more than a ghost story trotted out on Halloween. Most people didn't believe it. I certainly didn't. My name is Dr. Alastair Finch. I'm a historian, specializing in American folklore, specifically the strange, dark tales that blossom in the humid climate of the South. To me, Southern Gothic isn't just a literary genre, it's a field of study. And the story of the girl at the fair was a perfect specimen. I'd written a paper on it, dismissing it as a classic example of folk panic, a manifestation of the economic anxiety and religious fervor of the era. A fascinating case study, but just a story. Then, the town council, in a fit of nostalgia and a desperate attempt to boost tourism, decided to revive the Alachua County Fair for the first time in 80 years. The older residents, the few who remembered the stories their parents told, muttered darkly about letting sleeping dogs lie. But the plans went ahead. I went on opening night. For research, of course. I walked the grounds with my digital recorder, planning to write a follow-up piece. It was all so predictable. The same games, just with brighter paint. The same greasy food, the same screaming teenagers. A hollow echo of the past. And then I saw her. She was standing near the carousel. It was impossible. But my historian's brain, the one that deals in facts, just short-circuited. She wore a simple, timeless black gown. Her hair was black as midnight. Her face, it was the face from the single, grainy newspaper photograph from 1936. A face that should have been over 100 years old, but was instead the face of a woman in her mid-20s. Unlined, unchanged. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a descendant. This wasn't a marketing gimmick. The rational part of my mind was screaming explanations. A trick of the light, a family resemblance, my own imagination. But the part of me now staring at a living, breathing myth knew the truth. It was her. She turned her head as if sensing my gaze, and her eyes met mine. The stories hadn't done them justice. They were ancient, filled with a profound weariness and an equally profound power. Then the moment broke. She turned away. But her focus was different this time. She wasn't scanning for arrogant young men. Her attention was fixed on a young woman named Chloe, who was working at a nearby lemonade stand. Chloe was bright, vibrant, full of life. The woman in black watched her with a strange intensity. It wasn't the predatory gaze from the legends. This was something else. It was possessive, appraising, like a collector admiring a rare piece they planned to acquire. Over the next few days, the strangeness escalated. Minor accidents plagued the fair. A gear on the Ferris wheel seized, a string of lights shorted out. Individually explainable, but together They created a palpable sense of unease. I started seeing things. A flash of a 1930s fedora in the crowd, the ghostly sound of a fiddle playing a frantic waltz drowned out by pop music. The woman in black, meanwhile, began her subtle courtship. She would appear at the lemonade stand and just watch Chloe. One evening, she bought a lemonade and their hands brushed. Chloe recoiled as if from an electric shock. The woman just smiled, that same knowing smile. She started calling Chloe her bride. She'd say it softly, an endearment that sounded like a curse. "You have such lovely hands, my bride," she'd murmur. Chloe would laugh nervously, unsure how to react. I knew I had to intervene. "I need to talk to you about that woman," I said to Chloe one afternoon, trying to keep my voice steady. Chloe shrugged. "Oh, her? She's a little weird, but harmless. Keeps calling me her bride. It's odd." "It's more than odd," I insisted. "It's dangerous. People die around her." Chloe looked at me like I was insane. And who could blame her? "Look, mister, I can handle myself," she said, politely but firmly dismissing me. The next night, the main generator for the Midway exploded, plunging the fair into sudden, terrifying darkness. Panic erupted. In the emergency floodlights that flickered to life, I saw them. The woman in black was holding Chloe, who had fallen. She was whispering something in her ear, her expression one of dark triumph. And in that flickering, strobing light, I swear I saw other figures around them. 3 ghostly shapes of men, their faces contorted in silent screams. The ghosts of 1936. It looked like they were bearing witness. Section 3. The pattern uncovered. The generator explosion snapped me into a frantic race against time. The authorities ruled it a faulty wire, but I knew better. The pattern was real. She was here. She was unchanged. And she was closing in on Chloe. The only question was why the shift? Why a bride instead of a groom? My apartment became a whirlwind of research. I pulled every book on Southern folklore, demonology, local history. I was looking for a key. My search led me to the Gullah Geechee folklore of the coastal South and the legend of the Boo Hag, a skinless, witch-like entity that steals life force from its victims. The tales said a Boo Hag sheds its skin to go riding at night. Was that what happened to the men in 36? Had they been ridden to death in a fatal dance? It fit. But it didn't fully account for the deal-making or the need for a witness. For that, I had to look at crossroads myths, bargains with supernatural entities for the price of a soul. The fair, I realized, was a kind of crossroads, a temporary junction of people and possibilities where the normal rules don't apply. She had combined these 2 terrifying traditions into one recurring ritual. The real breakthrough came from the county archives. I told the clerk I was researching agricultural trends, a lie that got me access to uncatalogued records from the original fair. After 2 days, I found it. The fair's official account book from 1936. Tucked in the back was a security log titled Incidents and Testimonies. The first entry detailed Samuel Blackwood's unfortunate collapse. At the bottom, a small note. Witnessed by half the town. No one saw a thing. The second described the discovery of Elias Thorne. Below that was a deposition from the witness Elias himself had designated, the drunk from the bench. The transcript was rambling, but one phrase stood out, underlined twice. He said the deal was made. I saw it. She made me watch. The third concerned Billy Ray Cobb's accidental fall. Stapled to the page was a tear-stained note from his mother, begging the sheriff to look deeper. It read, "My boy wasn't clumsy. He was scared. He told me she touched him. that it was cold as the grave. He said he felt like she took something. A farmer heading to market before dawn said he saw them. Said he saw Billy Ray standing there like a statue while she walked away. He was my boy's witness, and he didn't even know it.
My blood ran cold. The witness wasn't just a bystander.
The act of observing, of doing nothing, sealed the pact. It made them complicit.
But there was more. The fair hadn't started in 1936.
I pulled records from earlier years. 1888, a debutante dies of a sudden fever after dancing with a handsome stranger. A witness, her jealous suitor, recounted the dance with morbid fascination. 1905, a salesman wagers his luck for a year on a card game with a mysterious woman. He wins, but is found dead the next morning from a fit of terror. The witness? The card dealer. The pattern stretched back decades. Every generation or so, she would appear, choose her victims, make a deal, and ensure a witness. The final piece clicked into place when I found a diary from 1905, written by a minister's wife. The old Gullah woman who helps in our kitchen, she saw the woman too. She says she is no devil's bride. She is older, a boo hag who grew too powerful. She says the hag made her own deal with something that sleeps under the land, a deal for eternal life. But the price was that she had to have souls, bound by a witness. And, the diary concluded, every few generations, her own stolen skin wears out. She must find a new one. She must groom a bride to take her place, to become the new vessel. I finally understood. Chloe wasn't a victim to be killed. She was being groomed to be the new skin. The woman wasn't choosing a new groom. She was choosing her replacement. I raced out of the archives. It was the final night of the fair. I had to get there. What could I do? Show a 111-year-old diary to a security guard? I was just a historian. But as I ran towards the pulsating glow of the midway, I realized with dawning horror that by uncovering the pattern, by obsessively watching her and Chloe, I'd cast myself in a role I never wanted. I had made myself the perfect witness.
The conclusion. The air on the midway was electric. I pushed through the throng, desperately scanning for Chloe and the woman in black.
I found them at the symbolic heart of the fair, the central plaza, directly in front of the Ferris wheel.
Chloe stood as if in a trance. The woman in black held both of her hands.
The crowd swirled around them, completely oblivious.
"It's time, my bride," the woman said, her voice cutting through the noise. "It's a beautiful gift. You will never age. You will never fade. You will dance at the fair forever." Chloe's eyes were wide with horror, but she was frozen.
"No!" I yelled, stumbling into the clearing. "Leave her alone!"
The woman turned her head to face me, a slow, serpentine movement. Her smile was vast and ancient, utterly devoid of humanity. "The historian," she purred. "The witness. You've watched so diligently. It's only fitting you're here to see the final move. Deals need eyes to be binding, darling. For years I've made do with drunken louts and ignorant farmers. But you understand. You see me for what I am. You will make the perfect witness."
"What are you?" I choked out.
She laughed, a sound like dry leaves on pavement. "I am older than the crossroads you read about. The devil is a story they tell children. I am a truth they buried in the soil to forget. I am the bargain made in the heat, the promise whispered in the dark." She turned back to Chloe, leaning in as if for a kiss. "I won't watch," I said, turning my back and squeezing my eyes shut. I would not be her witness. The air grew still. The sounds of the midway faded. I heard a gasp from Chloe,
a soft, wet, tearing sound. And then a voice right behind my ear, Chloe's voice. "Oh, but you already have," it said. I spun around. The thing wearing Chloe's face stood there, her eyes glowing with that same ancient light. She looked down at her new hands, flexing them. "Such a perfect fit," she murmured. "So much life in it." On the asphalt, where the woman in black had stood, lay her gown, empty and discarded like the shed skin of a snake. The entity was gone. No, not gone. It had moved. The new Chloe smiled at me, a terrible, familiar smile on a fresh, young face. "Thank you for your service, historian," she said. "The deal is done. I'll see you when the fair returns." Then she turned and vanished into the joyful, ignorant crowd. I was left alone at the crossroads. I had tried to break the cycle, but my obsession had made me the most important part of it. I was the witness who understood, and in doing so, I had given the ritual more power than it had possessed in a century. The fair left town, but for me, it never ends. I see her sometimes in my nightmares, Chloe's face with those ancient eyes smiling. I see the ghosts of Samuel, Elias, and Billy Ray, their faces frozen in silent screams. I continue to write and research, but I'm no longer just a historian. I'm a keeper of a warning that some stories are real. The fair is scheduled to return next year. I don't know if I can stay away. The historian in me is morbidly curious to see what she does next. But the man who stood at that crossroads knows. She's not just looking for victims anymore. She's looking for an audience. She's looking for me. Every town has a story like this, a dark legend people whisper about when the sun goes down. What's the darkest local legend from your hometown? Let me know in the comments below. And if you dare to witness a deal for eternal youth, hit that like button. For more Southern chills and stories that stick to your soul, make sure you subscribe. Just be careful what you watch too closely. You never know who might be watching back. And if, one summer night, you find yourself driving a back road and you see the faint glow of string lights rising from a field that shouldn't be there, don't follow the music. Don't step through the gates just to see if the legend was true. Because somewhere beneath the hum of the Ferris wheel and the sweet scent of kettle corn, she is still dancing. And if her eyes meet yours across the midway, and she smiles like she's been waiting, remember this: the most dangerous part of any story isn't the monster. It's the moment you decide to keep watching. Thank you for joining this moonlit journey. If you'd like to unwind with more tales each week, light your lantern and subscribe. For now, blow out your lantern. We shall meet again.